provide you with the lowest per GB rates, night or day. SLT 4G, driving you ever forward.
Making headlines at first at 9. Influence of an unknown hand. Patriotic Professionals Forum challenges UN classification of terror group, the LTTE.
If 32 countries had banned LTTE, your member countries, how come your final report on Sri Lanka says that it is not a terrorist organization?
The Global Sri Lankan Forum meanwhile dismisses genocide claims.
Have these complainers not wondered if there is any claims to genocide while majority of Tamils are living by choice among the Sinhalese?
The penny drops. As the rupee plummets, the central bank pledges aggressive intervention to curb excess volatility. Sorry tale of two MPs. Parliamentarians Vimal Veeravansa and Prasanna Ranavira suspended from Parliament. A reprieve. Court issues stay order on the CID investigation of former Minister Ravi Karunanayake over alleged falsification of evidence at the Bond Commission. Drifting elections. Report on the delimitation of electorates in provincial councils set to be delayed by another 2 months. Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Kanayaka. Now, starting with your local stories, the convener of the Patriotic Professionals Forum, Dr. Nalaka Godaheva, charges that an unknown entity attempted to deliberately mislead the world on the conduct of the terror group, the LTTE. Now, speaking at a forum held on the sidelines of the United Nations Human Rights Council session today, Dr. Godaheva questioned the classification of the LTTE in the report commissioned by the UN, which led to the resolution 30/1. He charged that the final report defined the terror group as a non-state armed group.
LTT must be criminalized by the Human Rights Council resolution, and they didn't do so. This is a threat to world peace and security, and UN, Sri Lanka government has the right to take this to the UN Security Council. And the second thing is that there is a dispute in the UN system not defining LTT as a terrorist organization with the UN Global Counter-Terrorism Strategy, and Sri Lanka government has a right to go to the International Court of Justice for a binding decision against the Human Rights Council resolution 30/1 for not defining LTT as a terrorist organization.
We should not be misguided here, thinking that the LTT is over, because it is only those who were in Sri Lanka at that time who got wiped out, who got killed. But those who had left Sri Lanka before May 19, 2009, and also who are already operating overseas, they are still at large. Suddenly, they have become human rights champions. And they are talking about human rights problem in Sri Lanka. The resolution 30/1, which had 20 clauses in that. Out of that, only one refers to LTT. The whole issue was about a war where the Sri Lankan government was combating terrorism. How can that happen? And then the Human Rights Council, when they mandated this report, very clearly referred to combating terrorism. But when the report came, that word was missing. It defined LTT as a non-state armed group. A non-state armed group is very different to a terrorist organization. Somebody deliberately attempted to mislead the world. If FBI defined LTT as a terrorist organization as far back as 2008, if 32 countries had banned LTT, your member countries, how come your final report on Sri Lanka says that it is not a terrorist organization? As long as the financiers of all these LTT atrocities are there, how can you say that terrorism was over? Therefore, we need to take action. There has to be an investigation on that. We are not against terrorists, because Sri Lanka belongs to all nationalities.
Meanwhile, LTTE sympathizers accused the Sinhalese of a genocide against Tamil people at a session parallel to the United Nations Human Rights Council session today. Rear Admiral Sarath Weerasekara of the Global Sri Lankan Forum strongly rejected the allegations.
You co-sponsored the resolution, right? 30/1.
No, excuse me, do you mean to say that the command
should be banned for people who are affiliated with war crimes? As far as my knowledge, a few people you mentioned across the meeting session is that
informed Mr. Vigneswaran, the Chief Minister of the Northern Provincial Council, the TNA and the other remnants of the LTT propaganda machine, signed a letter and gave it to the outgoing human rights head, Navi Pillai, claiming that the Tamil people strongly believe that they have been and continue to be subjected to genocide by Sri Lanka. That was totally unwarranted and legal action should be taken against the DNA in view of the dangerous path it has opted to take. Legal action should ensure that TNA does not use its political privilege to steer Tamil people and the rest of the Sri Lankan populace towards another era of death, destruction and animosity. Have these complainers not wondered if there is any claims to genocide while majority of Tamils are living by choice among the Sinhalese and not a single has been killed for living with the Sinhalese, while the Northern Provincial Chief Minister is on record for saying that Sinhalese are not welcome in the north. The Tamil population in the south of Sri Lanka are increasing day by day, and as it is now, there are more than 450 Hindu Kovils in the western province. Does that in any way an indication that there is genocide against Tamils by the Sinhalese?
Now, this story is currently trending on our YouTube page. You can recap this story by logging on to the Ada Derana YouTube page. And of course, you can also read the full story on www.adaderana.lk. Moving on to other local stories, the Supreme Court today upheld the Appeals Court's decision calling upon the Sri Lanka Medical Council to register Saitam medical graduates. On the 31st of January, the Court of Appeal ruled that the South Asian Institute of Technology and Medicine is legally eligible to issue medical degrees to its students.
Today, the Supreme Court upheld the appeal court ruling that the Sri Lanka Medical Council must register medical graduates of the South Asian Institute of Technology and Medicine. The appellate court had also directed the Sri Lanka Medical Council to give provisional registration to medical students passing out from the private medical college in Malabar. However, the SLMC decided to appeal against the ruling of the appeals court to provisionally register Saitam medical degree holders. The three-member bench, chaired by Justice Eva Vansundara, today rejected the appeal filed by the Sri Lanka Medical Council, challenging the appeal court's ruling. Announcing the verdict, Justice Prasanna Jawardena stated that the petitioner, a Saitam medical student, has the right to be registered with the Sri Lanka Medical Council as a medical practitioner in terms of Section 29(2) of the Medical Ordinance. The judge said accordingly the verdict delivered by the Court of Appeal on January 31, 2017 is lawful. He also ordered the Sri Lanka Medical Council to pay 100,000 rupees in compensation to the student in question for the injustice she had faced due to the delay in her registration. Meanwhile, convening a media briefing today, the Government Medical Officers Association said that they will request a meeting with the President and relevant parties on the matter, and a Central Working Committee meeting will be called on the 25th of this month to take a decision on the future course of the matter. In other court proceedings, the Colombo Chief Magistrate today issued a stay order on the Criminal Investigations Department's investigation of former Minister Ravi Karunanayake over allegedly providing false evidence to the Bond Commission. Counsel appearing for Global Transportation and Logistics said the Bond Commission had no legal authority to direct the CID to launch investigations. Magistrate Ranga Disanayake said an order would be given in this regard on the 28th of this month. Meanwhile, former Army Intelligence Officer Lieutenant Colonel Eranta Pires, who was arrested by the Criminal Investigations Department in connection with the disappearance of journalist Pragit Eknaligoda, was remanded until the 28th of this month.
Now, the government has set aside 9 billion rupees to provide dry rations for approximately 420,000 people suffering due to the prevailing drought. Now, President Maithripala Sirisena made the claim while addressing the inauguration ceremony of the national program to renovate dilapidated tanks under the cascaded tank village system, along with several other projects today.
President Maithripala Sirisena today participated in a ceremony organised to vest 500 water purification systems in the public, set up at a cost of 800 million rupees. The President then offered pure drinking water collected from all 500 water purification systems to the Jayashree Mahabodhi. In the meantime, the national program to renovate dilapidated tanks under the cascaded tank village system commenced today under the patronage of President Maithripala Sirisena in Mahavilache today. 17 tanks in the area are selected to be reconstructed, and the President handed over 2,500 land deeds and agricultural equipment to people in Anuradhapura.
නියඟයට ලක් වෙලා ඉන්න පිරිස මේ වෙන විට 4,22,000ක් වෙනවා. ඊයේ ලැබුණු අලුත්ම වාර්තා. මේ 4,22,000ට අපි සල්ලි වෙන් කරුවා මිලියන් 9,000 ආහාර මළු දෙන්න. දැන් මේ සතියේ ඉඳන් ඒක පටන් ගත්තා. මේ ඊයේ ලංකාදීපේ කන්න 6ක්ම පාළුයි. වේල් ගණනක් බත් නැතුව අඹුසැමි යුවලක් මුරුංගාකොළ තම්බාගෙන කාලා. අනුරාධපුර දිස්ත්‍රික්කේ. මම මේකට විශේෂ නිලධාරියෙක් මේ ගමට මම යවුවා. මේ ගමේ තත්ත්වය බලන්න. නමුත් එක දෙයක් කියන්න ඕන මේ විදියට වෙන්න දෙන්න බෑ. මේකනම් ගම්මානවල තත්ත්වය මම ජනාධිපතිවරයා විදියට මගේ දැඩි කනගාටුව මම ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා. ඒ අයගෙන් මම සමාව ඉල්ලනවා. මගෙන් පහළ හැම කෙනෙක්ම මේ තත්ත්වයට වග කියන්න ඕන. එච්චර ආණ්ඩුව හිඟමනට වැටලා නැහැ. ඒ අය ගැන බලලා උදව් උපකාර නොකරන තරම්.
The Parliament today voted against MP Vimal Veeravansa and MP Prasanna Ranavira, suspending them from attending parliamentary sittings for a period of 2 and 4 weeks respectively. The motions were brought against the two parliamentarians for their unethical conduct during a recent parliamentary debate.
The joint opposition engaged in a protest in Parliament on the 31st of July against the statement made by former State Minister Vijay Kala Maheswaran on the terror group the LTTE. State Minister Ajit P. Perera made a request from the Speaker stating that parliamentarians Vimal Veeravansa and Prasanna Ranavira should be taken before the Committee on Ethics and Privileges over their unethical conduct in relation to their behaviour on the 31st of July. Accordingly, the Parliament today approved a motion through a vote to suspend UPFA parliamentarian Vimal Veeravansa for a period of 2 weeks, which passed with 39 votes in favour and 21 against. Another motion was also approved by vote to suspend UPFA parliamentarian Prasanna Ranavira from attending Parliament sitting for a period of 4 weeks, with the motion passing with 41 voting in favour and 21 against. Accordingly, the two parliamentarians will be prohibited from entering parliamentary premises during that time period.
In the meantime, the Delimitation Review Committee has informed the Speaker of Parliament that its report on the delimitation of electorates in provincial councils will be delayed by another 2 more months. A communique issued by the Speaker's office said that the committee informed the Speaker the report submission would be delayed by 2 more months as broader consideration is required on the facts pertaining to the delimitation of electorates and reach an agreement. According to the communique, Speaker Karu Jayasuriya had called a special party leaders meeting today to discuss this latest development. During this meeting, attention was directed towards some measures required if the Delimitation Review Committee delays the report further, while the Speaker had emphasised the need to hold the Provincial Council election as soon as possible, regardless of the situation. The Prime Minister had stated that the matter will be discussed with the Cabinet and the opinions will be notified to party leaders shortly. UPFA parliamentarian Uday Gammampila asserts that the 20th Amendment to the Constitution will lead to a bipolar government as it gives rise to 2 executives, leading to a chaotic situation in the country. Speaking to Indivari Amuwatta at Hyde Park on Ada Derana 24/7, he stressed that such a constitution is seen nowhere else in the world.
Suggest should be our course of action going forward in terms of addressing this national question rightly? What should we do now?
May I ask you a question? What is our national question? Unless we define our question properly, we can never find a solution. See, we have been attempting to solve a problem which is labelled as national question for last 70 years since our independence. Have we ever been successful? No, we have failed. Then we should, my problem is, we don't know what is the national question is. Without knowing the national question, how can you find a solution?
Through the 20th amendment to the Constitution, we're discussing about several amendments, several key changes that will take place to the Constitution. But you've been voicing against this. You are quite vocal about it. What do you think we need to do in terms of managing our Constitution?
What we demanded is quite different to what is offered by the JVP in the 20th Amendment. 20th Amendment was brought to abolish the executive presidency. That was the express objective, but what it does is something quite different. Firstly, 20th Amendment make a bipolar government, because 20th Amendment proposed 2 executives. According to the 20th Amendment, President is the head of the executive. On the other hand, Cabinet of Ministers will not be, presently Cabinet of Ministers is headed by the President, but President will be taken out of the Cabinet and Cabinet will be headed by the Prime Minister. But according to, after the amendment, Article 4 of our Constitution would say executive power of people will be exercised by President and the Cabinet of Ministers. Then there will be 2 simultaneous government. One is President has the executive power, then he can even declare war. Then there is a Minister of Defence in the Cabinet. That minister has no relationship whatsoever with the President, because President is not a member of the Cabinet. Then Defence Minister does something, as the Commander of Chief, President does something else. So 2 parallel governments. This kind of a constitution cannot be seen anywhere in the world.
You can catch a repeat telecast of the program at Hyde Park tomorrow at 7 p.m. right here on Sri Lanka's news channel, Derana 24/7. Now moving on to other local stories. In the latest development of the Sri Lankan rupee, the currency dropped to a new record low of 170 rupees against the US dollar today. According to the foreign exchange rates issued by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, the selling rate of the US dollar is 170 rupees and 65 cents, while the buying rate is shown as 166 rupees and 78 cents. Now, in the meantime, the central bank has expressed its intentions to intervene aggressively to curb the rupee slide.
The Sri Lankan rupee fell today to hit a record low for an 8th straight session. The Sri Lankan rupee depreciated against the US dollar, with the selling rate of the US dollar passing the 170 mark for the first time in history, with it closing at 170.6569. According to the central bank, the buying rate is recorded as 166.7839. In the past 5 days alone, the dollar rose by 5 rupees and 51 cents, weakening the rupee further by 4% this month and 9.4% so far this year. According to Reuters, Senior Deputy Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe had said that the central bank will intervene aggressively to curb excess volatility in the rupee exchange rate. He was quoted as saying that the CBSL will not tolerate excess volatility seen in the market during the last couple of days, and that the CBSL will intervene aggressively. The plummeting rupee was a topic of discussion at various forums today as well.
The main reason why the value of the rupee is falling because we do not have investments flowing into the country. Between 2015 and 2018, the Indian rupee depreciated by 12%. However, the Sri Lankan rupee depreciated by 24%. Within this year, the value of our currency has fallen by 8%. This may be a conspiracy which is taking place. However, the depreciation of the rupee will only affect certain goods and services like oil and gas. We feel these effects are temporary. If we continue like this, we cannot stop interest rates from rising. This will impact manufacturing and will put a stain on businesses. The agriculture and export sector is affected. Even our share market is in a horrible state. We do not see a government willing to take action.
In every sector, we are collapsing. If you look at the economy, dollar that was only 131 when this government came into power has gone up to 170 by today. Till it was 164, no explanation was given. Now suddenly the justification that the government is giving is, it is due to the conduct of the US president that the US dollar is strengthening and rupee is depreciating. I mean, can people buy, believe, accept this type of justification?
Now, the Central Committee of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party has removed several MPs and senior members from their respective electoral organiser positions, citing that they have failed to establish electoral committees. Now, accordingly, parliamentarians Susil Premajayantha, Anura Priyadarshana Yapa, WDJ Senivratna, TB Ekanayaka and Chandima Veerakkodi are among them.
The Central Committee of Sri Lanka Freedom Party convened last night under the patronage of party chairman President Maithripala Sirisena at the President's house. The Central Committee's attention was drawn to several issues, including the establishment of SLFP electoral committees. General Secretary of the SLFP Rohana Lakshman Piyadasa said that at present nearly 150 electoral committees has been established. A decision was also taken to appoint organisers for the inactive electorals. Accordingly, organisers for the Yapahuwa, Katugampala, Kaduwela, Ratnapura, Karandeniya, Habaraduwa and Hakmana electorals were appointed. In addition to the appointments, parliamentarians Susil Premajayanth, Anura Priyadarshana Yapa, TB Ekanayaka, WDJ Senaviratna, Gunaratna Vijayakon and Chandima Virakodi was removed from their SLFP electoral organiser posts.
I have done my best for the betterment of the party. Having done all those sacrifices, we joined the unity government upon a decision taken by the Central Committee of the party to serve in a unity government for 2 years. Upon expiration of the 2 years, we decided to step down. We submitted a proposal to the Central Committee which has not been taken into consideration to date. Those who are still continuing in the government are the ones who are acting in contrary to the party discipline and party decisions. Without taking action against the ones who are continuing in the government, contrary to the decisions taken by the party, they have sacked us from our positions as organizers. The decision that we took to throw this government out of power cannot be stalled or stopped by these type of decisions taken by a few who are planned to ruin SLFP.
We're going to move in for a short break. We have business news on the other side of it. Stay tuned.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now let's continue with business news. The World Bank warns countries most vulnerable to climate change to pay more attention to regular changes in weather patterns as their communities are at greater risk of being affected by adverse weather. Speaking at an event held in Colombo yesterday, Chief Economist for the South Asian region of the World Bank, Martin Ramos, said that the cost of changes in average weather is equivalent to the estimated cost of extreme weather events and sea level rise.
Launch of the country gender assessment of agriculture and the rural sector in Sri Lanka was held in Colombo yesterday. The launch highlighted the findings and recommendations, followed by a panel discussion with various experts on the subject. It was organized by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations.
First, a lot of the attention on climate change has been on two things: sea level rise and extreme weather events. Those two, I think, are very clear. We have paid less attention to something that is perhaps as important, and is the regular change in weather. Those additional degrees, that variability of rainfall, that may have also effects on livelihoods and may affect not necessarily the same people who will be affected by sea level rise. The cost of the change in average weather is as large as the estimated cost from extreme weather events and from sea level rise. So this, in that order of magnitude, is not small.
A large-scale systematic investment in risk, understanding and mitigation across the sectors is not yet in place due to resource and other constraints. Our ministry is in the process of developing a project proposal on integrated water resource management to be funded by the World Bank and the Green Climate Fund. This project will undertake the conservation of watersheds in the Central Hills. We will also address the issues related to drinking water. It is also proposed to transfer excess waters of the rivers flowing down to the wet zone to the dry zone areas, where it would help reduce flash floods in the wet zone and increase water availability in the dry zone areas.
And now to give you a market update, the Sri Lankan shares dropped to their lowest close in more than 30 months today as foreign investors sold banking stocks. The all-share price index ended 0.29% weaker at 5,904.9, its lowest close since the 9th of March in 2016. The turnover was 977.7 billion rupees, more than this year's daily average of 796.3 million rupees. Foreign investors sold a net 359.9 million rupees worth of shares, extending the year-to-date net foreign outflow to 5.6 billion rupees worth of equities. Now with that, let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other currencies around the world. It's time to take a look at news from around the globe. Now, the UK government has responded to European Union leaders rejecting a Brexit proposal championed by its Prime Minister Theresa May, saying it is a credible and a workable deal. In Salzburg, May said that both sides have to evolve their positions if a successful Brexit deal is to be struck, with the UK set to leave the bloc in late March next year. The EU maintains that the UK cannot cherry-pick elements from its rulebook. May said today the EU must treat the UK with more respect in Brexit negotiations. In a statement at Downing Street, she told EU leaders that rejecting her plans with no alternative at this late stage of negotiations was not acceptable. The UK government insists Theresa May's Brexit proposal is a workable, credible deal despite being rejected by EU leaders at a summit in Salzburg. Minister James Brockenshire said tough words were to be expected near the end of negotiations, but the government was resolute in its bid to get a deal. He said the so-called Chequers plan does deliver, and it was now up to the EU to be specific about its concerns. The UK is due to leave the EU on the 29th of March in 2019. Prime Minister Theresa May says her plan for the UK and EU to share a common rulebook for goods but not services is the only credible way to avoid a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. But it is opposed by some within her own party who argue it would compromise the UK's sovereignty and got a cool reception at this week's EU summit in Salzburg, Austria. May described her talks with the European Council President Donald Tusk as frank. The EU has argued that the UK cannot cherry-pick elements from its rulebook.
Everybody shared the view that while there are positive elements in the Chequers proposal, the suggested framework for economic cooperation will not work, not least because it risks undermining the single market.
I would like us to have this conclusion being drawn in October, because time is right now for the agreement. A no deal is not my working assumption, but would it happen? Then we are prepared, because the Commission has prepared in detail all the elements of consequences of a no deal which could be entailed by a no deal.
We got sports news coming on the other side of this break, so stay tuned.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
A very good evening to our viewers and welcome to Forecast First. Starting off with your temperatures for tomorrow, that will vary between 20 and 35 degrees Celsius with the highest of 35 expected in Mullaitivu. Well, when looking at the map, a low pressure zone will develop in the western province and will gradually disappear. Well, moving on to your rain forecast for tomorrow, several parts of the upper region of the island except for Putlam and Trincomalee will experience the sunny weather. But it will be an opposite scenario in the lower region of the island, as most parts will experience showers with thunder activity also expected. That's all from the Weather Centre tonight. Up next is your City by City forecast.
Well, it's Friday today. That means it's time for the good story. Now, this week's good story comes from the United States, where you meet Freddie Reese, who helps women and girl children escape from forced marriages. Child marriage is legal in 48 of the 50 states in the US, and more than a dozen states have no official minimum age or limit to get married. Due to specific legal loopholes, girls and women across the country are being forced, pressured, threatened and physically forced into marriages against their will with little or no recourse. Freddie Reese was also forced into an arranged marriage at the age of 19 after living with an abusive husband for 13 years. She escaped only to be shunned by her family and ostracized by her community. Today, she is working to change the laws and running the first and only not-for-profit entity aimed at helping women in the US resist or escape forced marriages. And that's it from First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.